I'm very grateful and honored to have Edward Beshara from Beshara Global Migration Law Firm with us today. A little bit of background on Ed. Beshara Global Migration Law Firm for 37 years has been committed to offering approvable solutions to ensure a successful approach to obtaining your US business and family visas and citizen and residency by investment. Beshara manages an experienced team of professionals, including immigration attorneys, economists, business plan writers, secretaries, corporate attorneys, and certified public international tax accountants. Member of the Global Migration Section, GMS of AILA. He's also past president of the Central Florida American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILA chapter, and served as its National EB5 Conference Committee and Global Migration Steering Committee. An active member of IIUSA, which is Invest in the USA, and serves on its New Investor Markets Committee and Best Practices Committee. Also a member of the Advisory Committee and Task Force of the Investment Migration Council, IMC, Geneva and Switzerland. Former adjunct professor of Business Immigration Law, University of Florida, Levin College of Law, and also among the top 25 EB5 immigration attorneys in the US. EB5 Investors Magazine has reported, recipient of the IIUSA 2019 Award for Economic Enhancement, Innovator Award, and speaker on many national and global EB5 panels, and author of many EB5 articles. Today, we're very honored to have Ed Beshara with us. In a moment, I'm going to be introducing our second panelist, which is Osahan. He's based in Lagos, Nigeria. Osahan Edemudia. But over to you, Ed, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Good day, Sonia. How are you? It's a privilege to be here, and thank you for the invitation from yourself and FPP, First Pathway Partners. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Osahan, for joining everyone today. I think this will be very enlightening for the listeners. And as Sonia said, I have had 37 years experience in the United States, originally from Australia. I was born in Adelaide, grew up in Melbourne, went to law school there, obtained 2 law degrees. I pursued a master's in international law as well. I was admitted to the bar in Victoria as a barrister and solicitor. Yes, the barristers in Australia still wear the white wigs and black gowns. But when I came to the US, one had to go back and obtain an American law degree. But so I became really the first immigration lawyer in Orlando, Florida. And at that time, there were probably about 500 immigration lawyers in the United States. And so a lot of my friends and colleagues, just a handful that have been practicing for more than 37 years, still exist. But now there's many thousands of immigration lawyers. But what I would like to do is convey our experience and some of our expertise in addressing the issues of H-1Bs and EB-5s. As you all know, when we talk about US immigration, we're talking about non-immigrant entry into the US as well as immigrant entry into the US. And so a lot of people, when they visit the United States, well, they're coming in as non-immigrants. They're visiting for a temporary period of time, and then at the end of their authorized stay, they have to leave and go back. When we talk about the green card or permanent residency, we're talking about someone having the intent to reside permanently in the US. They're able to do so without limitation, and they can come and go, of course, in and out of the US, but their permanent residence, their home, is the US. So when we talk about H-1B, it's a non-immigrant visa. When we talk about EB-5, it's an immigrant visa. Briefly, H-1B is for those professionals that have been offered a job by US employers. And those professionals can be from any country. Those professionals can show that they actually have a US degree or the equivalent of a US degree. And it can be combined with their education and experience to show they have the equivalent of a US bachelor's degree, which is a requirement for the US employer to be able to hire a foreign national, is that they do have the degree or its equivalency. And that is under what's called the H-1B category. And a lot of people may get confused and say, well, why do you say these letters, H1B? Why do you say EB5? They're all part of the categories that are mentioned in the US immigration laws and regulations. So subparagraph H, subparagraph 1B. So through common usage, we're using letters and numbers. But the H1B translated means it's a professional work visa. It's a temporary professional work visa. And how do we get there? Well, basically, when someone has the degree or the equivalency, that US employer has certain business activities that realistically require the foreign national to have the degree that matches the job title and the job duties and the job requirements today, not in the future, but today. So it will involve the following process. A lot of families want their children to be educated in the US. And we all want our children to be educated, through either academic education or even or work experience. So when the foreign national family decide that they want their children to go to school in the United States, they can enter the United States under what's called an F1 student visa. They're admitted into a college or university. And usually the bachelor's degrees in the United States is a 4-year degree. And sometimes, like in Australia, for example, it's a 3-year degree, or other countries it may be 3 years. But in the US, it's a 4-year degree. So when the family is saying, okay, I'm going to send maybe 1 or 2 children, for example, to the United States to go to school as an F1, most universities in the United States welcome foreign students because you have to pay very high fees, extremely high fees for a student to go to school in the United States under the F1. And so they're there for 4 years paying these really high fees. And then the parents might say to the students, well, look, do you want to stay in the US? Oh, yes, definitely. After the 4 years, they're entitled to optional practical training. For 1 year, they can work if they find that employer. But then for them to work longer under what we call the H1B category, then they still have to find that employer that would be willing to petition for them for the H1B category. And then they file the petition with the US Immigration Service, and if it's approved, well, then they can start work. The cycle is that because there's so many applying for the H1B, if you apply for the H1B, it has to be usually at the beginning of any calendar year, in this case, 2021. And then the process now is that the employer has to register their candidate for the H1B status. Unfortunately, the US immigration laws and regulations only allow 65,000 H1B petitions per year. 65,000 only. Most of the time, there are 250,000 employers wanting to file these petitions for H1B candidates in any 1 year. So as was the case at the beginning of this year, we had, a couple of 100,000 filing their requests through registration that they want their candidate to become a H1B employee. They just went through the system. A lot of 65,000 were selected, but the others were not selected. So there is also the risk that you could have your children, let's say, go to school in the United States under the F1 with the goal, of course, of wanting to work for an employer. So even if they find the employer, which can be hard in itself, it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to stay in the US and have their career and work in the US. A lot of parents want their children to be safe. A lot of parents want to migrate to the US, and they want their children to have a wonderful career, a wonderful lifestyle. And a lot of parents that are very wealthy also like the idea of coming to the US because they can secure their wealth by investing in the United States. So now we know that the H1B is a category that basically is for the professional worker to be employed by a US company. That wish, that goal may not always be achieved. And so when we are looking at our potential clients coming to us and say, Edward, what should we do? How should we plan our future? And we act like a clinic. And in the United States, there's a clinic called the Mayo Clinic. And when something is wrong with you medically, you say, gee, I want to get some expert opinion. So they go to the Mayo Clinic and they have all these specialists looking at different options for surgeries. And then in the end, after some analysis period, then and diagnosis and tests, then there's a decision of what are the best options from a time standpoint, risk standpoint, and cost standpoint. And so that's what we're going to do when we talk about H1B, EB5. When we talk about a client coming to us, we bring in the team of professionals. Myself, we bring in First Pathway Partners, we bring in people like Osahan that does a lot of the corporate work. And then basically we say, okay, what are your goals? Well, my goal is that I want to make sure that we preserve our wealth. We want to invest in the United States because it's more secure than our own country. Our currency valuation is terrible compared to the American dollar. We want to put our own currency right now into the US. We want to make sure our children have a safe future. We want to be safe. We want to be secure. We want to be able to walk the streets. We want to be able to get involved in business. And we want our children to further their education, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, doctor's degree. And we will say, well, great. Well, Mr. Beshara, we've heard about the H1B. We've heard about the fact that we can go to school. Yes, we're spending a lot of money. And then we're going to be able to get them a job through an employer. Well, the universities are going to say, sure, this is a procedure. You can get optional practical training. And then, of course, the employers can file a petition for you. But a lot of the universities, what they don't tell the families that want to come to the US is that it's not guaranteed that they're going to find an employer. It's not guaranteed that even if they find the employer, they're going to be able to get a job under the H1B category. Very, very risky. And the parents are spending all this money for the kids to go to school in the United States. So we know that the H1B is there. A lot of professionals do work in the United States under the H1B, only if they're picked, only if the employer's petition is picked, right? But what's the alternative? And then we look at the cost, number one. What is the cost of sending your children to school, universities in the United States? Substantial. And then we look at, okay, what is the cost of students going to school in the United States and not being able to get that visa, that H1B visa to work in the United States? Do the parents really want the children to go back to the home country? Because the whole reason is that the home country may not be as stable economically as the US, as one example. So then we talk about the EB5. The EB5 is a category, employment-based category 5. I'm one of the very few, we're probably the only US immigration attorney in the United States that have the initials Ed Beshara, EB. I was born on the 5th, and the number of our building here is 555. So maybe I was meant to do EB5. But EB5, we've been representing clients in this category since the start of EB5, almost 30 years ago now. And it's a wonderful visa for people that have wealth and for people that want certainty in getting certain results for not only themselves as the parents and investors, but also their children. And if we talk about the H1B, from the early start, we've talked about children being educated in the United States, or even children being educated in a foreign country and then trying to get a H1B from the foreign country, which we know now it's not certain. How do we create certainty, and how do we reduce the cost of wanting to come into the United States and the planning? So right now, we know that the minimum investment under EB5 is $900,000. And it's in a project that's either located in a target employment area or a rural area. Once you find a project that's in a target employment area or rural area and is operated and managed by a viable operator, by a viable company, and it's branded, it's in a good location, and the due diligence says, well, look, what has FPP done before? Well, they've done many EB5s before, projects. Are they credible? Is this a project that's going to be viable? Viable in the sense that, is it going to continue to exist and last through good management. So once we talk to the clients and we're comparing the H1B, and then we're looking at EB5 as a goal to create certainty and a goal that reduces the cost of migrating to the US. And when we compare and we have the columns and look at the cost of the H1B, in other words, going to school, especially if the students are in the US going to school, and then the cost of being a non-immigrant under a H1B, and then from there, because it's only a non-immigrant, then the cost of trying to get a green card through that same employer or a different employer, that could take another few years. So the cost of being in the US as a non-immigrant compared to the cost of being an immigrant. Under the EB5, once you find that viable project and you make that investment of $900,000 plus the attorney's fees and administration fees, once you make that commitment, then you're in the waiting line to get a conditional green card. And the beauty about this is that if the parent, for example, files this EB5 petition, it will include the spouse and all the children under 21 to get their conditional green card in a 2-year period, probably a little bit longer than 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. That's what we plan. So right from the beginning, as soon as the client comes to us, even if the children are still in secondary school, high school, we would say to the parents, how can we save you hundreds and thousands of dollars? They start the investment in EB5. It includes the children, includes the spouse. And maybe for those parents, as an example, that have children still in secondary school, by the time the children are ready to go to college, and parents want the children to go to college in universities in the United States, which would cost them a small fortune, hundreds and thousands of dollars, now they are getting their conditional green card through EB5 in a 2.5 year period, and for the children. And so now the parents are saying, we can pay for our children to go to a US university or college as US residents, not as foreign students, F1s, but as US residents. Our children, all of us, can now have a future in the US. And when we know certainty, it has huge value, financial value with that certainty. So with the certainty, now the parents are saying, okay, we can secure our wealth, we can secure our family to have a lifestyle that's going to be permanent now in the United States. And so when they compare H1B and EB5, without any question, the EB5 is less expensive and they can save hundreds and thousands of dollars by going through EB5. And at the same time, they have peace of mind that there's a goal that will be achieved to obtain US permanent residency within a very short period of time without the uncertainty of F1 student visa, H1B professional visa, trying to get an employer to get approval for them to get a green card. So in comparison, they've gone to the clinic. We're saying EB5, regional center projects, the least expensive way and the fastest real way of trying to obtain US permanent residency. And of course, Sonia and Osahan will talk about the particular project that they have in mind. But in the final word, you know, when clients come to us, we say, self-help, what's the last word in self-help? Is help. Going to the professionals that know what they're doing, going to the professionals that have the experience, the expertise, going to the EB5 projects that have the credibility in the past, and they will continue with that credibility in the future. So thank you, Sonia, Osahan, Emily. You know, I look forward to hearing from you, Sonia and Osahan, and then, of course, answering any questions. Thank you.
Very nicely compiled and put together in a nutshell. And, you know, the takeaway from this is, you know, your certainty of a green card, and that would be EB5. I'm going to, at this point, hand over to Osan Edumudia. He's my colleague in Lagos, Nigeria. And over to you, Osan. You can tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do for our clients and your clients in terms of EB5 investment.
Thank you, Saya. Thank you, everyone. Ed, thank you for such elucidation as ever. My name is Usaho Idemudia. I'm a legal practitioner and attorney based in Lagos, Nigeria. Basically, I am involved, our firm is involved in commercial law practice. We run a small boutique law firm called the Ogama. I qualified to practice in Nigeria 32 years ago, got to the Nigerian bar, and spent the last 31 years as a senior partner at the Liberal Law Office, where I still remain as a partner emeritus, as it were. But the Ogama is basically focused in commercial law practice, and we have a little, and we also assist in no small measure with business migration as it relates to residents, investments, and also second citizenship regards to other jurisdictions countries. FPP has been a very strong and veritable partner in helping quite a few Nigerians realize their desire to broaden their horizon as global citizens, given the realities of today's business and economic climate. How do you broaden your horizon? How do you take advantage of other opportunities in other jurisdictions? And just as Ed has said, without the baggage, being led in that regards by people who are very professional, who've walked the path, and then lead you through all the bumps, skip the hoops, and all the other hazards that might lie in the way. Now, looking at the H1B visa, particularly as it applies to Nigerians, has been a very interesting offering, but one that people haven't actually taken advantage of and looked beyond, particularly Nigerians. Nigerians are very thirsty and hungry for tertiary education abroad, and the United States is one of 3 destinations Nigerians pretty much frequent, the other 2 being England and Canada. But I think by my United States is one of the preferred destinations. And most Nigerians in the United States, particularly the ones who are ordinary residents in Nigeria, do pay the high dollar fee that Ed just referred to in sending the children abroad, the students. What happens after the education? What was the original intendment by their parents in making them global citizens? Did they just send them to the United States to have an education and then come back to Nigeria? Or did they intend them to have that very broad base in terms of aspiration, have a global education that suits you well globally, and after that education, and find yourself being able to work anywhere in the world? And like Eden said, the H1B visa is a natural follow-up after the student's visa for the average Nigerian who then intends that global citizen status or aspiration for his or her world or child. Now, given the very limited nature of the H1B visa and the fact that it's a lottery, 6,500 offerings in a year, and at the behest of the employer, what Ed and FPP has realized, and I guess the main reason was informed this particular broadcast today, is helping people understand how to transition from the student's visa to having a residency and a pathway to a U.S. citizenship in the United States of America in an effective and an effectual manner. So what is actually on offer, and what I encourage a lot of people to critically look at and then buy into, is the transition that is offered you in migrating from the student's visa perspective after graduation into a very stable and secure residential stroke work or investment status in the United States of America. And the EB-5 gives you a very effective pathway going through the H-1B visa. I think what I've seen, which is extremely attractive, and which I would like people to look at, is the fact that you then don't have to withdraw immediately after your student's days. And if the investment towards the EB-5 visa is looked into early enough, the parents can begin to do that investment on behalf of the child while the child is still resident there. Some of the things that I think Ed will have to help elucidate on for greater clarity for those listening is how that transition takes place. One of the things we will realize, we've come to realize, is the fact that we don't have to have all the money immediately while the student is there. It can then be accumulated, as it were, working towards the period when the investment, the money makes the grade for the EB-5 visa. The second thing is the fact that the investment or the finances can be produced on behalf of the person who makes the application. In other words, the student himself or herself doesn't need to have the $900,000 that is required. That can be put forward by the parents or any other benefactor that has a relationship with the EB-5 visa. We as a firm have been able to, in conjunction with Beshara and Co., help a few Nigerians who have had desires in relocating and continuing in business and investment in the United States to achieve that ambition. And some of them are well settled in the United States with their family, and they're quite happy with it. FFP, First Pathway, offers some of the most interesting offerings on the market. Because what's very important with regards to the EB-5 is the fact that you've made an investment with a company that has a track record, with a company that will be able to sustain the job requirements and all the other requirements for the period the process goes through the mill. So I want to thank Sonia and all of them, everyone at FFP for this program and the platform, and continuing to reach out to Nigerians, both the Nigerian diaspora, to actually give them the opportunity of the global citizen aspiration, credible platform amongst and indeed in business and investment offerings. Thank you very much, Sonia.
Very nice to have you on a webinar with us, all the way from Lagos, Nigeria. Just to also just add in, First Pathway Partners, myself in Johannesburg, I look after the whole of the African continent. So, I just thought it would be a really, really good platform, for Nigeria to be showcased, so that people from the region, if they wanted to see, a representative and an attorney, looking at your EB-5 project, Osohan and Libra Law Firm are very well situated, a little bit further north of what we are. Obviously, we're always open to seeing anybody at any stage, whether it be online or whether it be in person. We do our best, with COVID restrictions. But yes, and I'd like to go straight into our EB-5 project. So I'd like to introduce you to the Tempo by Hilton. Very exciting. So a lot of people are saying, well, post-COVID, should we be looking at hospitality EB-5 projects? And that's what I would like to share with everybody today. After Edward Beshara's very kind introduction in terms of EB-5 and also Osohan's mention. Just to give you an idea, just the background on the Hilton Group. They're in 118 countries. I'm not going to go into that too much. The vision and design concept, as you can see, of the new concept of Hilton, fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality by delivering exceptional experience. So it's all about the experience. Just a little bit about the size of the project. It's an 8-story hotel development, 155 guest rooms. It's 137,466 square feet total area. Got meeting spaces, rooftop bar, private terrace as well, ground floor restaurants, outdoor seating, and obviously a large 60 garage parking spaces. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Just a little bit about all the big names that are actually in Milwaukee itself and around the area. What I'd like to point out, the location, and I think this is the most important in terms of when we did the feasibility in terms of the project. The Hilton Tempo sitting right there in the grey bubble, right nearby the Buck Stadium. It is also close to the Arts Museum. It is also next to a huge conference center where there's obviously will be a lot of residents and a lot of feet going through the area. And then also where a lot of the concerts, the music concerts are held, are also in walking vicinity to the Tempo. So I think in terms of the feasibility, that was one of the big reasons why First Pathway Partners had to look and see, the viability and execution of having a project like this successful. There's a lot of background checks and a lot of due diligence that goes into a project like this. Obviously, we're in a targeted employment area, as Edward Beshara mentioned. So we are looking at 513 jobs to be created, and which is twice the amount of job creation that's expected, more than twice, because you look at 21.38 jobs per investor, per EB5 investor. So it way outperforms the jobs that need to be created in our project. Our budget, we can share this with you. This is freely shared. I'm just going to flick through the slides quickly today. Just the EB5 structure, the first mortgage loan, the EB5 investment investors, and then obviously the equity. So it's structured very, very conservatively in that respect. Obviously, we look at return of capital, which is the biggest element. EB5 funds have to be at risk, but you've got to look at the regional center that you invest with, and you've got to know that you're going to get your I-829 approval, which is right at the end. We've got our exit strategy as well, which can be made available to you. About our developer HKS, so you can see some of the projects that we've done, which is the Aloft Hotel, Global Water Center, the Hampton Inn, and Kempton as well. So First Pathway Partners has had 100% green card approval over the last decade and full investor funds returned. So, in terms of looking at a project, you need to look at the regional center, which you are investing your EB funds in, to see what their track record is and their project completion, as well as their track record in terms of your full funds returned, of which we have 100%. And just going through the last few slides, we've actually generated over $1 billion worth of economic development, and once again, 100% success rate on permanent green card issuance. And that's it from me, from First Pathway Partners. You can contact me at any stage. That was just a very quick overview of our new EB5 Tempo by Hilton project. And from here, I'd like to hand over to Osahan. He's got some questions that he'd like to ask Ed. And from there, I would like to ask Edward some questions that have been presented from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. And I must say, the Tempo project looks extremely exciting. The location, the offering, and even the closing. Thank you so much. Ed, some of the questions that would naturally arise, and I would like you to put some light and to throw some light into those questions, is how can I file an H-1B petition? Someone has graduated in the United States, so he meets the degree qualification. He has an offer of employment while he's still in the United States after his graduation. How does it go about applying for a H-1B visa? Okay.
Awesome, thank you. And it's it's been over the years, it's been a pleasure working with you, Asahan, and your firm. And we work very well together. But to answer your question, Asahan, it's a question of not just having an employer that wants to hire that individual that has the equivalent of a US bachelor's degree, which could be a Nigerian student or Nigerian professional. But the answer to your question is that the employer has an opportunity of registering the particular employee that will be desired to come and work for the US employer at the beginning of every year. And this year, 2021, we had to register, let's say, around April the 1st. The US employers had to register around April the 1st. And then now we're into, March, where there was pre-registration. All the numbers have been taken up. So there's no certainty that just because the employer says, I'm going to register you before April the 1st of any one year, that the employer's petition for that, as I said, for that particular potential employee, which is the Nigerian professional, will be chosen, right? A lot of the petitions that are registered by employers are not chosen. So there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to work in the US under the H-1B. And if they are picked, then the earliest start date would be October the 1st of this year. So if we, as an example, very quickly, you have a US employer that wants to hire a Nigerian professional, they register as of April the 1st. We're going to, and even today, we know that some were picked, some were not picked. So, and even if you were picked, you couldn't start until October the 1st. So a lot of uncertainty with H-1Bs, right? Thank you, Asa.
And that leads me to a follow-up question, which is a curious one. Now, if I'm a student in the United States and my first route to remain in the United States post my graduation is through the H-1B petition, and you've just shown that is a bit of a lottery, a huge toss-up. How can my parents assist me if they were looking at the EB-5 while I was a student and while I'm a student there, and I'm looking post-graduation, rather than me going for the H-1B visa, how will I go for the EB-5, and what will my parents need to know? What will I need to know in bringing this into a reality, particularly looking at the magnificent temple offering that FFB has put together? How do I realize that ambition through the EB-5?
Thank you, Asahan. So basically, I think that, we've both mentioned the process, but what's the advantage of an EB-5 is that, especially if the parents have more than one child, they may have 3 or 4 children. And as I said, if it's a goal to relocate the whole family eventually one day and to have the children get very good jobs in the US, to have the freedom of choosing what employers, then the least expensive way of doing this is for the parents, and one of the parents to be the main EB-5 investor, to file that EB-5 petition. And now that petition will capture all the children under 21, and all the children under 21 will be able to obtain US conditional permanent residency within the 2.5 year period. It's very cost effective because, as we said before, why wait for the child to become 21 and then the child at 21 would have to file their own EB-5 petition? And that means that if the parents want to come to the US and the child who's already turned 21 wants to come to the US, then there's 2 EB-5 investments. It's easier to say to the parents right from the beginning, if we can talk to the parents when the children are younger, and even if the child is about to turn 21, as long as the petition by the parent investor, EB-5 investor, is filed before any child turns 21. The child may be 20. So that's okay, because now we're going to capture all the children, because even after the EB-5 petition is filed and the child turns 22, then even if the child is 23 at the time that the whole family is applying for conditional permanent residency, then the children are grandfathered in, right? If we're going to be smart about this, the parents need to say, look, my children are even in school in Nigeria. Why not file while the children are young and then save all that money in US college fees, right? That's the best choice. If the children are already in college in the US, right? Well, it's a 4-year degree. They may even want to go to do a master's. So as soon as the parents realize that as soon as they can file the EB-5 petition, one EB-5 investment, it's going to capture the whole family and save the family, as I said, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost in migrating to the US.
And thank you so much. Now, what you've just elucidated, what you brought out to us, is the fact that it has to be anticipatory. And it's something you have to plan towards, capture all the children in one EB-5 nest, rather than allow all the children to actually have their own separate filing. One last question, Ed, with regards to, now I'm looking at this offering by FFP that Sonny just talked about. Even we're interested in the offering. I know the EB-5 offering for regional centers at this time is now $100,000. And all a parent has at this time, it says to you, I have 500 right now, but I have a home in the United States, which I bought some years ago. And I would like to invest in this, but I don't have enough money at this point. I have some cash liquidity. Can they still actually aspire? Is there any way that they can sort of aggregate what they have in making this investment that Sonia just talked about? Yes, Ed, please.
Thank you, Hassan. It's a great question. I think that, you know, the easiest answer, because it is an easy answer, is that if we are dealing with, let's say, a Nigerian or a South African or anyone from any part of the world that has wealth in their own country in the form of assets or stock on the stock exchange, homes in the United States. And as you said, Osahan, let's say they have $500,000 cash, but they want to now invest in an EB-5 project. And most of the projects would require the entire full amount of cash, the $900,000 plus the administration fees, to be filed at the time of filing their EB-5 I-526 petition. Well, for years now, and Yosahan and you and I know this, for years now, if you've got a foreign national that has assets in the US, for example, like real estate, there are many mortgage companies in the United States will say, well, what is the value? What's the liquid value of this particular home in the United States? Well, it could be 700,000. Well, how much do you need to borrow? Well, the mortgage company will say, okay, we will give you $400,000 as a mortgage. So we know that the asset, the home that's purchased by the foreign national in the US, we know that they accumulated the cash to buy this home through their maybe work or their own business. So we can authenticate, as you said, Osahan, the source of funds. And where do they get the money from to buy the house? And then they're getting a loan against the house in the form of a mortgage. That loan money is their money. They're authenticating the source of their money, their personal money that they are personally now investing in the EB-5 project. They already have the $500,000 cash, which we have to authenticate the source, and now the $400,000 loan. And of course, now we're saying they've got the full $900,000 to invest in the EB-5 project. Most of the clients that we work with can show at least they have the financial ability to repay the loan if it's ever asked by immigration. So that's one way of doing it. What if they do have stock on the stock exchange in various countries around the world? Well, then we know that there are companies in the US that can loan the investor US dollars against their foreign assets, such as stock in stock exchanges around the world. So there's always a way and means to accumulate personal funds which belongs to the investor so that can invest in the EB5 project.
Fantastic. And I have a last question. I know Sonia has some questions. It would seem, and this is really my final question, and I think I speak on behalf of all Nigerians who aspire to be global citizens. It would seem that it's cheaper for any parent who aspires to send their children to the United States to school to actually key into the EB5 program and then apply for the visa as against waiting until the last minute when the child is due to go to university over there and then looking for a student's visa, as it were. So can you just touch on, again, I know you talked on it, but just elaborate briefly, the advantage to the student and the parent of an EB5 visa over a student visa, even with regards to the fees, school fees. Thank you.
Quite a few years ago, I was asked to come into the universities and give a little bit of a talk about the immigration process for foreign students at the universities. And the position of the universities was to tell the foreign students that, yes, you know, as they are going to school and university in the United States, that there's an opportunity for them to get a work visa after the fact. As the years went by, the universities and colleges don't tell the full story to foreign nationals. Without any question, they do not tell the full story. Right now, most of the universities want the funding from foreign students because it's a huge amount, as we said. Foreign students is a huge source for the universities to receive funding. They do not want to tell the parents the full story, or even the students the full story of the fact that, yes, you can get an F1 student visa to come to university or college in the US, but they're not telling the full story that there may not be an opportunity for those students to find a job and be able to get a H-1B or work visa or even permanent residency through a work or job offer in the United States. There's too many risks involved. So you're not going to get the full story from the universities or colleges. You are going to get the full story from us, Osahan, from you and me, and then Sonia and FVP, that the fact is that the best way to save money is to start as soon as you can for the EB5 program. The best way, right? Because now the students have residents, they can go to any university or college. They can start when the universities say, oh, yes, all the employers and all the businesses are coming in to talk to the students that are about to graduate. Wouldn't it be wonderful for the student to say, look, I'm already a resident, and all these particular companies that are trying to offer me jobs, I can say, yes, I can work for you, right? The alternative is, well, I'd love to work for you, but you're going to have to petition for me. You're going to have to register. You're going to have to do all this work before you can get me. But then they're going to say, well, what about all the other Americans or the other students that already are either citizens or residents? Why do I want to go through the trouble of hiring a foreign national if I have to go through all this, right? So now we want our clients, our foreign national investors, to realize that the best thing they can do for the children, you know, or for themselves, right? For anyone that wants to think, well, I can get a H-1B, you know, the uncertainty of that, right, interferes with good planning in migrating to the US.
Good planning. Thank you very much. So I'm going to hand over to you. But just as in handing over to Sonia, is that Ed has 100% success rate with all the Nigerians who have applied for the EB5 visa to date. And I do remember 2 or 3 of them actually had young families, and they're all very well cosseted in their previous schools. So the advantage of good planning. Thank you so much. Sonia, over to you. Thank you.
Edward Beshara, Osahan, I always battle with your surname, Edimodia. I want to thank you both for today. Osahan, you covered all the questions that I had, so there's nothing else from my side. And I would just like to thank both of you for your time today. I know you have very busy schedules and a lot of legal matters to attend to. So I think today was very informative. If you would like to get in touch with any of us, you're welcome to reach out to me on my website or on our website, www.firstpathway.com. Under our people, you will find me or pop us an email at any time. There will also be a replay link sent out to everybody, so you will have our details to get in touch with us. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sonia. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Ed.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.